The Dice Tower is made possible by listeners like you. Thank you for your support. And by Cool Stuff Inc. Cool Stuff, in stock at coolstuffinc.com. The Dice Tower, episode 587.
5 years ago, the best of 2014.
Welcome to The Dice Tower, a podcast about board games and card games, and especially the people who play them. On today's show, we answer questions about sight-reading rules, how to deal with the introverts in your gaming group, or the extroverts if you're the introverted one, and who's to blame for component quality when you're not the original publisher. Then we begin our yearly trip into the past by re-examining our top 10 games from 2014. I'm Eric Summerer, and here's your host, the Vitruvius to my Emmett, Tom Vassell.
I don't know what you're talking about.
You don't know what have you not heard of a small little film called The Lego Movie?
Well, I looked up Vitruvius, and it's Marco Vitruvius Polio, commonly known as Vitruvius, was a Roman author, architect, civil engineer, and military engineer during this one of the centuries BC.
Yeah, no, we're talking about Vitruvius, the sage character from the Lego Movie, played by Morgan Freeman.
Nope, I don't remember much about the Lego Movie.
You were the sage and I am the special.
Oh, Emmett, I do know Emmett's name. I only read the first one. Sorry, I was getting caught up in the second name. Did the Lego Movie come out in 2014?
Yeah, that came out in 2014, yeah.
Look, I only have enough room in my head for so many stats, and so it's mostly board game stats and birthdays of children.
That's important.
Alrighty, folks. Well, welcome to the Dice Tower. I'm Tom Vassell.
Hi there. I'm Eric Summerer. Happy New Year.
Woohoo! So a couple things to talk about here for the new year. Let's start off with some housekeeping. From our last episode, we did the best of 2018.
Last year.
Which was last year. So last year. But we never did the People's Choice Top 10 for whatever reason. So
yeah, I thought you had that you did that for a reason, Tom.
Sure. I just forgot. So here we go.
Oh.
Let me tell them to you now. Number 10 is Gone Sean Clever.
Oh, yeah.
That's pretty high for a roll and write. Number 9, Keyforge. Call of the Archons. Number 8, Teotihuacan. I'm close.
No.
City of the Gods.
Teotihuacan.
Just say it for me.
Teotihuacan.
Fine. And number 7, The Mind. Number 6, Brass Birmingham. Number 5, Architects of the West Kingdom. That's pretty high, actually.
Wow.
Number 4, Welcome to.
Wow.
Number 3, Coimbra. Number 2, Root. And number 1, Rising Sun.
Yep.
The people agree with me. Chronicles of Crime missed out at number 11. That saddens me. But what do you do?
Yeah. What do you do?
A lot of these games also haven't hit widespread, and so time will go on. So anyway, let's leave 2018 behind us. Moving into 2019. We're not leaving it behind us. In a moment, we're going to talk about games that came out in 2018. Okay? I'm not that cult of the new. In fact, today's episode talks about 5 years ago.
It's true.
However, we do want to talk about the Dice Tower in 2019. Now, we're going to be running our Kickstarter for the Dice Tower 2019 slightly later this year, just due to some logistical reasons. It's going to be launching at noon Eastern Standard Time on January 21st. So that's still 20 days from today, if you're listening to this on New Year's Day. Mm-hmm. So if you think the Dice Tower has helped you out at all over the past year and you're interested in helping support us, that's going to be a way to do so. And we'll talk a little bit more about that in the episode leading up to it. But we just wanted to mention it now to get you ready. And we got some pretty neat stuff coming out for this one. And we'll talk more about that as time goes by.
Neat stuff, you say?
Stuff neat, I do say. But let's jump now into some games. So we're going to be jumping back into 2014. But we'll talk about some games that we've played. We'll start with, actually, I think for the first time, no, I don't think Eric's played one of my games. But we played 5 of the 6.
Interesting. I have played all of the games on your list. If you've played all the games on my list.
You have?
This will be a fun discussion.
Oh, I didn't know you had... Oh, wait, you talked about the one. Okay, never mind. Yes, we are not talking past each other. All right, Eric, go ahead with what is turning out to be one of the most popular games in our Dice Tower library, for sure. Indeed,
this was a buzzed-about game in the Dice Tower Retreat library. It's called Crown of Emara. It is a resource-gathering, point-gathering style game that uses 2 rondels, circular action tracks. 2 of them that are just sort of quadrants. There's a 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4 in 2 different loops, and you have 1 character on each of these loops. You are going to move them around and do the actions associated with the quadrant that they end up in, but you also have these action cards. You'll draw 3 of them for each round of the game, and they have actions on them as well. And you then program them on a little board in front of you. There's a 1, 2, and 3. So if I put an action card that says I take this particular resource on the 2, not only will I get that resource, but I also move one of my 2 characters 2 spaces and do that action. And of course, I've planned all 3 of my cards. I know I'm moving one of them 1 space, and then another one 3 spaces, and another one 2 spaces, and then I get to do these 3 actions in whatever order I planned, of course, reacting to what everyone else does. You're collecting resources, then spending them to sort of invest in tiles and get bonuses. Also, there's crowns, because it's the Crown of Emara. You can buy these crowns that sort of go up in rank and earn you progressively better points as you go along, but they get progressively more expensive as you go. You can put little helper people on the resource gathering track, and when you activate that particular zone, not only do you get a regular good, you can also transfer goods and sort of translate them into things, get additional goods. You just sort of get better and better doing what you do. And that's generally how it's going to go. You continue like this for, I think, 2 times through your deck. So you get, it's 9 cards in your deck. So you get like 18 actions in the whole thing. And then you total up your points. What I like about it is that there's a good amount of planning, but not too much. I mean, you get the 3 cards in your hand. You have to deal with those, and then you're putting them in the 3 slots. So it's sort of like a mini puzzle each round. You get your cards. How am I going to make these work to do the thing I'm trying to do? Can I do what I'm trying to do? And if I can't, how do I, still earn some points this round? And it has the sort of short-term tactics, 3 cards at a time, and then you continue that several times throughout the course of the game and hopefully end up in a good position. I like it. It pushes a lot of the buttons I enjoy. I think it's solid. I don't think it's available in English for a while. I believe I read 3rd quarter of 2019. But it is a very solid game. That's Crown of Emara.
No kidding. I went down to hunt down another copy of this for the Dice Tower Cruise because I figured it was so popular. And I finally managed to snag a copy from overseas, but the amount of work that was. This was a tough one. This and Underwater Cities are both hard to get a hold of.
Yeah.
I still think I like this game a lot, and you do too. That is what your conclusion was, right?
Yes, absolutely.
Okay. Are you willing to try the advanced variant?
Ooh, what's the advanced variant?
Well, there's 2 advanced variants. One of them is pretty basic. You start with all 9 cards, and you pick which one you're going to play.
Oh, okay.
Instead of drawing 3.
Okay.
I don't care about that one. That will just, to me, add analysis paralysis. But the other one, you take the 2 rondels and mix them up.
Oh, because they're puzzle pieces. They aren't always in the same order each time you play. Oh, interesting.
But you can mix the 2 of them. I think that might hurt my brain.
One of them might have 2 spaces that have certain resources that you're collecting, and then 2 spaces that. I mean, it's worth a try. It's worth a try, but
it's in the book. It's not like I made this up. This is something that they actually put in the book. It would also mess up your OCD because the backgrounds won't fit together so prettily.
Absolutely. It's worth a try, but I might not want to do it. Yeah,
but I want to try it.
It might not be my preferred way to play.
Let's jump from a very good game to a mad game. So this is Outback. Well, maybe Eric likes it more than I do. I didn't dislike this game. This is a dice Yahtzee style game. It's set in the Outback of Australia. It's from Hook or R&R Games. And it comes with this really big vehicle that's literally there for no reason at all.
It elevates the tiles slightly.
That's true. You're putting 5 tiles on top of this thing, and you just randomly draw them from a bag. You could just put them on the table. But anyway, whatever. I think it's to justify the Ticket to Ride size box.
Yeah.
And so you are rolling dice in your turn. If you're playing the basic game, it's 6. If you're playing the advanced game, it's 7 dice. You get to re-roll twice, just like Yahtzee. And you're trying to get groups of animals that match one of these tiles on top of the car. So I might roll 4 platypuses and 2 lizards. And if there's a lizard and a platypus on the car, I can take the platypus off and put it on the 4 section of my board I have in front of me. The board has different numbers on it. And then the platypus, I put it on the 2. There's also some wilds. But I could roll 6 platypuses, and if platypus tile is not there, too bad. You need to roll the tiles that are there.
Exactly.
Which is going to range from 1 to 5. Usually there's at least 2 different animals there. Once you place these on your board, you will score 1 point for that tile, plus 1 for each of the same tile it's next to. And you have 5 different point trackers for each animal. And it has a really funky scoring where they go around the corner of the board, and once they go around the corner, the scores immediately go from 9 to like 1.
Yes.
And you start building up again. But on the left side of the board, only your lowest 3 scores count.
Yes.
This is Kiesling. I usually like his stuff. Or was it Kramer? It was one of the 2.
Future Eric here. The designer of Outback is Michael Kiesling.
The game, and then the advanced side is 7 dice, and there's some more variants. If you can't play something because you didn't roll what you want, you put some negative tiles down. There's some bonus tiles you get if you fill a certain section.
Right.
The problem with the game is it's literally a Yahtzee variant, right?
Yes.
It's very similar to Yahtzee. You roll, try to get a certain combo. If you don't get a combo, you have to put a 0 in a spot. Same kind of thing. It's a little longer than it needs to be. And most importantly, there's too much luck. Not in the dice that are rolled because, you just roll dice, whatever.
Right.
That's how these games work. I'm expecting that. But in the tiles that are there,
yes.
If I really need a platypus and there's no platypus tile there, well, I'm just out of luck. And then finally the platypus tile shows up and Eric goes before me and that jerk takes it.
That's just good play right there.
Well, sure. And I didn't dislike it. Again, it was okay. But when it was done, I was like, I didn't feel like we had played anything that interesting, that new. And it felt like I don't know, it just felt like the luck of those tiles was too strong. You combine that with the already big amounts of luck from rolling dice. And when someone wins the game, it's not like, ooh, clever play.
Yeah.
I'd rather play Yahtzee, frankly.
Yes, I agree. I think we're at the same place here. It wasn't bad. And if you like the Yahtzee style games and want to try something with a little bit of a twist, yeah, this is great. A couple things that I also didn't like, the score track, while the system is interesting, in order to score all 5 of your animals, you need to get 2 of them around that corner. And then they all start counting positive points. And it took a little while to wrap your head around that. But until you get 2 around that corner, some of your animals aren't scoring anything. So you have to get them around. And then it's like, well, now it's all points. Now it's gravy. Okay, here we go. But the way the score track, these little tokens fit into notches on the outside of the board. So the board is like bumpy on the outside, and then these tokens sort of slide into it. But if you bump your board, you've just knocked it away from all the scoring tokens, and now who knows where those were. So there's a potential to really mess up where you are in the game. Also, it's very weird to have a koala driving a Jeep. At least I think that's what they were doing. Like, you've got this Jeep, and then the animals are in it, and like, what? Why are they in the Jeep? I don't know why. Have they taken over the zoo? Anyway, I agree. It's fine, but really, it's nothing to write home about. And of course, if you are going to play it, absolutely go for the advanced variant. The simple game is far too simple for anybody who's played games before.
Yeah.
Anyway, that's Outback.
Oh, well. What do you do?
Next up for me is a game called Fertility. This is another resource gathering.
Ooh, a pretty game.
Ooh, a pretty game. This is a game about collecting resources. It's a tile-laying game. You will position these tiles on a central board that everybody is placing into, and whatever you cover or place adjacent to, there's various rules, you will collect those resources, and then you sort of put them on your board, which is filled with buildings. And the buildings all have little spaces for all these resources that then will translate into points, translate into other resources that will just basically do cool things. And you're going to draft more of these buildings, put them in your like city section, collect more resources on the main board, draft more tiles, and try and fill all the cards that you've drafted over the course of the game in order to earn as many points as possible. It moved very quickly. It has cute little tiny resource wooden meeple things for collecting and putting in your buildings. I like the crunchiness, but it moved very, very quickly. Also, you're trying to make surrounded or you're trying to surround single spaces on the board with the tiles, which allow you to place your monuments, little cardboard monuments out on the board of your color. And those also help you in scoring. If you have the most of them, I think you score a significant number of points. And so trying not to leave opportunities for your opponents to be able to do that is also part of your placement. But you're still trying to get the resources you want, because sometimes your best placement for getting the resources you want is going to give your opponents a nice scoring opportunity for placing their monument out. And that's a little tricky. Anything you don't use, any resources you don't use on your turn, you lose. So you have to have buildings that will contain the resources you're gaining, which is it's a little bit of a pre-planning puzzle. But I liked it. It was certainly over relatively quickly, but felt like it had some meat to it. I liked it. Fertility.
Yeah, it has a little bit more interaction than you might think as you're placing these tiles and possibly blocking other people. It's weird that it has so few decisions, honestly, and yet they feel like they're meaningful ones. I don't know. It has a good feel to it. I agree with Eric. I like Fertility also.
Yeah.
My next game is one Eric talked about several episodes ago, I think, and that is Subatomic.
There was a few.
And you know what? I don't really need to talk much more about this, but I just want to keep hammering this home because I want to see companies keep doing this, and Genius Games just keeps knocking out of the park with their science-themed games. Subatomic is a deck-building game, which doesn't offer a ton of new stuff to the genre other than letting you keep some resources on a scoring track, essentially, between hands. But the artwork is so colorful. The theming is really strong. It's a good, solid, fast deck builders. Deck builders are getting kind of out of hand these days with their complexity. That I have to recommend it. I really liked Subatomic. It's pretty fun.
Yeah, it's definitely solid. I haven't yet played.
Yeah,
I haven't played it with my kids yet. I need to do that. All right, I mentioned this one very briefly in our Best of 2018. This is a reprint of a classic Reiner Knizia game called Stephenson's Rocket. This is the new Grail Games edition of Stephenson's.
Classic might be kind of projecting.
You have already expressed your distaste of this one. So Stephenson's Rocket is not...
I have not yet begun to protest.
It is not a sci-fi game. It refers to an early railroad design. Stephenson was an inventor, and the rocket was one of these engines. And you are placing railroad lines, but you don't own a railroad line. You are investing in them. So this is actually a little bit more like Union Pacific or like Airlines Europe or Acquire than it is about, say, Age of Steam. But you are building train lines. On your turn, you can extend one of the many train lines that are on the board. You can invest in industry. There's a bunch of cities on the board, and they all have 3 or 4 different city industries that they are involved in. You can simply take one of your cubes, put them on the board, and say, I'm investing in steel in this particular city. Sure, whatever. If something connects to that city, then you will be eligible for some majority bonuses at the end of the game. The key is that you're also getting stock in these railroad lines, every time you extend a line, you're going to gain a piece of stock in it. Once you have stock in a railroad line, you can veto what happens to that railroad line. So if it's going in a direction you don't like, you can say, I'm calling a veto round. And then there's a once around the table bidding round where you bid shares in the company to prevent it from going in the direction that you want, and manipulating that. Yes?
I would like you to pause here and explain to me thematically what that means. I don't understand it.
That if
you want to move the train a certain direction, I say no. So let's bid actual shares of the company. I win the bid, so I give up shares to move the railroad train the way I want it to. That might be a decent game mechanism, which I'd fight over anyway. But how does that even thematically make sense at all?
Well, I think you are giving up your capital in arguing your case to maneuver it in a different direction. But once you've done that, people don't want to listen to you anymore. We've already thought about your concerns, sir.
But I actually dislike that on a personal, in a game level too. To get the train to move where I want it to, I have to give up control of it, thus negating me caring which direction it goes in.
Well, if you have enough shares...
I hate it!
But it's a way to manipulate the market and who is in the lead and has the most shares in a particular line. Sure.
So what happens is every time the person in charge moves something, somebody who doesn't care about that line vetoes it, so we can have this stupid bidding round that slows the game down just to make that person give up a share of the company.
Or
you actually put the train in a direction you don't care about just to make someone else give up a share.
Yes. But it still extends the line.
I hate that mechanism. That mechanism ruins the whole game for me.
Huh. That's not a new thing. That was in the classic game, too.
I didn't say I liked the class. I never played it. This is the first time I played it.
Okay. It's all about the manipulation of who's in control of these lines, because when they tag cities or when they tag villages, whoever has the most stations on that line or the most shares in that line will score points. And, getting them to tag as many cities as possible, these things can merge with each other, and that's a whole mechanism as well, because whichever train hits the other train gets absorbed and has a scoring, and you trade 2 for 1 the shares in that line. It is very much about the shares in the game. As far as the differences between this edition and the original had a lot more little tokens for those industry tokens. They were little chits that you used to collect off of the board. Now it's in a chart that you place cubes onto, which is nice because at first it seemed weird because I was used to the old version, but seeing on the board who has the majority in the various commodities and which ones are still available, it was easy to see what the board situation was. You also mark when a city's been tagged by one of the railroads, so it's actually active for scoring. Also, the shares, they used to be paper shares that you put in front of you. Now they're all on a chart on the board as well. So you can see who's in the lead, where everybody is, and know you don't have to do counting around the table. So I think functionally this works a little bit better. There's also an expansion map for the game, and there never was one before. I played on the US map, which is neat. A nice change of pace if you're used to the original British map. Anyway, I liked it. I think this is a lovely new edition of Stephenson's, and it gets a thumbs up from me.
Yeah, I can't tell you how much I'm not a fan of this game. It just feels plotting, it feels boring, and I hate the theming and the mechanisms. But the good news is this game is 20 years old. It was nominated in 1999 for the Origins Award for Best Science Fiction or Fantasy Board Game of 1999.
That is hilarious, and people keep bringing that up as why the Origins Award needs to be looked at, but it probably was after that.
Well, that was 20 years ago. But the other, it was up against Andromeda, Orcs at the Gates, Ricochet Robot, and Thunder's Edge. It also, in 1999, was nominated for Best Graphic Presentation of a Board Game. This is not the new version, Eric. This is the original version, which goes to show how far we've come in 20 years with graphical presentation. This wouldn't even be considered this year.
No, probably not. I mean, it's clear. There's lots of pictograms and descriptions of what you're allowed to do, and yeah, it's clear.
Oh, the new version is great looking. I'm not claiming that, but it is not my style of game at all. It feels it's like a lighter 18xx style thing, and
oh yeah, this is a dry Euro for sure.
Yeah, it's not the dry Euro part. It's just I feel like I'm forced to do stupid stuff just to stop other people from winning.
But you have that control.
You know what it feels like? It feels like a boring version of Acquire.
Okay. With no luck.
And Acquire's just... No, don't give me there's no luck in this game. The other players can act like an idiot, and there's nothing you can do to stop them.
Well, that's not luck.
They can merge... Well...
That's the actions of the other players. I mean, Acquire, you are pretty much dependent on the pull of those tiles. If you don't get that great merging tile that you really need in order to cause a merger.
Alrighty, fine. But no, I'm not going to argue that there's more luck in Acquire, and Acquire's also more fun.
I'm not going to convince you're going to like it, but it is a very solid game. But it is a deep, dry Euro.
It feels 20 years old, and I don't think a lot of people are going to like it. I think a lot of people will, but I don't think it's going to be a majority. I'm just guessing. But it is one of my favorite sci-fi games. All right. The next one I want to talk about is The Boldest. I already mentioned this, I think, in last episode because I like the artwork so much.
Yep, and Mandy talked about it one episode previous to that, I think.
That's true, but I just want to quick talk about how thrilled I was at the simplicity of this game. It's just this hand builder game, and you're dropping piles of cards, but as the game goes by, you're like, why do I need to play a pile? I could just play a couple and still get something good. And then watching the timing and the order that you play all these cards in is pretty fascinating. Yep. All this on top of artwork. The thing I like about The Boldest is you play some cards each round of the game, and you feel like you're in it. There's very little downtime, and it feels like a much more involved game than it is, and the 45 minutes just fly by.
Yeah. It's also great art. 4 or 5 rounds, and it goes really, really quickly.
5 rounds, yeah. So I'm very, very pleased with this one. I think this is one of the underrated gems of the year. I think not a lot of people are going to talk about this one, and I think it's one you should check out. And I also think Sophia Wagner is a designer that we should be keeping an eye on. This is her second game, I think, or at least the second one I've noticed, the first being Noria.
Noria, yeah.
And I'd like to see more from her in the future. So The Boldest, very, very happy with it.
I agree. I got to play this last weekend as well, and was very impressed with the speed, for one thing, the simplicity, and you are in it all the time. It is a blind bidding game that is a style that I like, because even if you lose in the blind bidding, you're going to get something. And you get to build your deck pretty quickly. Not only do you get to keep your cards and put them back in your bunk so you can use them next turn, you also get one free blind card from the recruitment deck. So you already got significantly stronger for the next round. But that timing is so important. You can theoretically win several bids with just a single card if you've timed it right. And still can get stuff, which could be very effective and allow you to keep your resources. Or you can go all in and miss out because you miscounted one person threw a pet into the pile, and you weren't able to defeat them on that particular bid, and then one of you goes home unhappy. Really neat. I like it. One last thing I want to mention before we move on is a quick note that the update to the Restoration Games Stop Thief app has come out, which includes a one versus many mode for the game. I already talked about how much I love the cooperative game. The one versus many is basically the co-op game. You're chasing Danny Atlantic and 6 other bad guys around the board, and once the team catches them, then the bad guys get to run away 2 spaces secretly and then hopefully continue on. Hopefully they lose everybody in those couple of movements. The trick, of course, is now the one is entering this stuff in on the app. So it feels a little more like Spectre Ops. And you've got the app with the map on it, and you're choosing your locations, and then it plays the sound clues, and when you get to escape, you get to make your movements secretly. And my son is, actually both kids are all over this, getting to be the bad guy, trying to hide, and everybody else trying to chase them. It is good fun and a great excuse to dust off your copy of Stop Thief.
All righty. Well, that's actually sounds like a really good idea.
It's very cool.
I don't have a segue here.
So why don't we dust off the mailbag and see what's in there?
Let's do it.
Tom.
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 Hey, Tom.
Have you ever accidentally eaten one of your game pieces?
Do you ever make a fort out of game boxes?
How big can a miniature be before it's not really a miniature? And now, the Dice Tower will authoritatively, definitely, possibly, maybe, answer your questions.
Tom, which way to the game library?
So David is saying, recently I've been looking at my collection and feeling like I have games that scratch most of my itches as far as different genres go, which makes me wonder about getting new games. How dependent is the hobby on getting new games? If you weren't reviewing games, how often do you think you'd acquire new games for your personal use? Every week, every month, or even less frequently?
If I wasn't reviewing games, I like to hope I wouldn't be getting them every week.
Uh-huh.
That seems excessive, right? I don't think I could afford them every week.
Right.
It's interesting because the hobby is definitely dependent on getting games from the publisher's point of view. They want people to continue to buy games.
Sure.
I don't think for you to be part of the hobby, you need to continue getting new games. For all that matters, you get one game and play it 100 times.
Mm-hmm.
We're going to always talk about new and bigger games on our show, but that doesn't mean you have to get all of them. You don't have to get new of them anyway. You could just find a game group and go play other people's games.
Sure.
I'm pretty sure there's some people in my game group who never buy games.
Sure.
They just show up and play other people's games. I don't have a problem with that.
Or, find a convention and get involved in the auction that always happens around those things, a no-ship auction, and buy all the games from last year and the year before that people have decided to get rid of that are still just fine, and play those inexpensive games rather than going after the new ones. But to answer your question, I think it would be a lot less frequently. I'd probably average maybe one game a month, but it would come in spurts. Around birthdays and holidays and maybe one big convention that I would consider going to, or maybe a bunch of smaller conventions, and I'd try and play a bunch of things there and then make a purchase of 3 or 4 games at a time. But I think it would probably average out to about one a month and I'd certainly play more of the older games more often rather than having to play the new stuff as often as I do. It would certainly change if I wasn't in this chair.
Speaking of this, though, I got an email from somebody who said that they had just paid $800 for a lot of games in an auction.
Ooh.
And their wife had thought that was a lot of money to spend on these games, but they promised that they would teach them all the games. I was like, oh, okay. He sent me a picture of the games, and I have more games than anyone that I know in my area, except maybe Jason, right?
Yeah.
I'm not jealous of anyone's game collection, and still, he pulled off a score here. There is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 shelves in this picture.
Whoa.
One of those shelves has junky games on it like Monopoly and Scrabble and Trivial Pursuit.
Okay.
The rest have not only extremely good quality games on them, but it looks like the vast majority of them are in shrink.
Whoa.
For example, top shelf here has Mysterium, Pandemic Legacy, I can't figure out what that one is, Union Pacific, Flick 'em Up, Gloomhaven, Cosmic Encounter from Avalon Hill, Pandemic Legacy Season 2, Zolkin, Tales of Arabian Nights, I can't figure out that one is either. Cry Havoc and Blood Rage. That's one shelf.
That's one shelf? That's $800 right there almost.
I mean, Gloomhaven, well, maybe not, but I mean, Gloomhaven alone is like $100.
Yeah.
And there's 9 more of these shelves. Mechs vs. Minions is on this thing. A Feast for Odin. All the Dominions. The Power Grid. Mansions of Madness. 5 Tribes. Small World. Pitch Car. So I told him, if you want your wife to think you've made a profit, we'll buy these at you for double the price. Stick them in the Dice Tower library because he did very well with this collection. So I applaud you, sir. That's neat. There's people listening to this who are probably jealous right now. But sometimes you're in the right place at the right time. Right? This is one of those things I looked at and I was like, wow. Yeah. That's impressive.
Yeah.
When I first got into the hobby, I would have easily dropped $100. I mean, my wife would have murdered me, but I would have easily dropped $800 on this. And I think he could flip like 8 of these games and almost get his money back.
Probably could, yeah.
So very, very impressive. I'm sorry, we're getting off track.
A little bit.
Next question is from the Game Mole. And this person says, as our collection has exploded, it's getting harder to read instructions before game nights. This person is the primary rules master, a job they love because it's fun to teach games. And they like when people tell them they do well at teaching, but the backlog is growing. And while they normally prefer to read rules, often new games they've read, rules don't get to the table as soon as I like, and they start losing the details in their memory, which force them to go back and reread the rules. The Dice Tower crew obviously plays more games than anyone on our groups do, so I was wondering how often, if ever, do you simply sight read the rules during your groups? Or do you always read the entire manual before you play? For example, we've begun simply sight reading some of our new lighter games when they hit the table, which involves me skimming the notes from beginning to end, hitting the important points. While the process isn't as smooth as when I can just outright teach a game from memory, we found it works decently well, but we're very hesitant to try it with a heavier game for obvious reasons. After you read through a manual, do you make sure it hits the table next time you have a group together so you can solidify the knowledge? Or is it better to simply see what the group is up for playing in a particular session? Whew.
Yeah. I feel your pain, Mr. or Ms. Mole. I often prepare a game, I always want to read the rules before I bring a game to game night. Rarely, unless it's like the new hotness that just arrived right before I head off to game club, will I bring a game that has not been prepped and at least with me familiar with the rules. But I can only hold so many new rule sets in my head at a time, and I'll come with a bag of 10 new games that haven't had a chance to hit the table yet. And so I will often forget that those details, as you say, become fuzzy, and we'll need to do some significant reviewing when we open it up and finally get it to the table. And it's maybe a 50-50 chance that the 1 or 2 new games that I have prepped that day make it to the table that day. If I don't have a pick in the pick list, it's not going to be my choice. If I can't convince the person who is picking the game to, hey, I got this new game, you want to play this one I'm ready to teach right now? Then there will be some review and sight reading. But I try and be at least familiar with the concepts and have laid out and played with the pieces a little bit to know. So you don't have that confusion of what is this card, what is this token. I know what that is. I just need to know how to set it up and get things moving.
You should do what Eric says. Don't be like me.
Tom reads things for the first time.
Yeah. So for the most part, I'm not too shabby at it. I can read really fast. I can grasp rules pretty quickly. I miss major rules a lot. But in my defense, once I teach the game, I keep reading the rule book during the game. I'm consistently reading and rereading and rereading to make sure I haven't missed anything. Sometimes I still do, and sometimes halfway through I'm like, well, actually. And then the group glares at me. I say, well, it's not that big of a deal. But you could have been doing this action here, and people are like, what? That would have changed everything. I'm like, I'm so sorry.
Yeah, that's me.
But remember, this is a learning game. So I do that because I have a hard time with a rule book and visualizing the game just from the rule book. I like to have the game set up and move the pieces around, which really irritates me when rule books don't have pictures. That's kind of funny. I need my games to have pictures. I mean, I read books all the time without pictures, but my game books, I want them to say, use this piece, and then I'm like, well, what is that piece? Give me that piece. Where is that piece in the box?
I hate having to flip back 3 pages to see,
Oh, I know. They're like, and then pull a MacGuffin card. I'm like, well, what's a MacGuffin card?
Yeah.
None of these cards have words on them. They said shuffle the deck. And then I go back in the beginning of the rules, and they don't show a picture of the MacGuffin card. And then I have to go, table of contents. Oh, there's 17 MacGuffin cards. Which of these decks has 17 cards?
Yes.
For rulebook people who do that, I wish to stab you with my pen. not hard enough to do any damage,
Right.
just enough to show my
and
irritation.
annoys you significantly. So Mike would like to share, when I hear people explain that they love what they love about playing games, the number one answer seems to be, I enjoy socializing, often implying that the game is secondary. I find when I hear this that I cringe. I assume a lot of us game players suffer from social anxiety, and I personally feel like an idiot when I flub trying to make small talk outside of the game discussions. I am introverted by nature, but when I'm relaxed, my personality comes out. I find I can only do this with my close family. I'm wondering if you have others in your group that are not social butterflies, and maybe how you engage them more. As a side observation, I've noticed that gaming is very popular with people that have technical careers, like myself, and folks that may be actors or performers, like me, Eric. I bet you can't guess who the extroverts typically are. My favorite joke about this is, how can you tell an engineer is an extrovert? They look at your shoes when they talk. Anyway, how do you engage the non-social butterflies?
That joke was not written by anyone. Eric just made that joke up.
I did not make that joke up. Mike wrote that down. It's Mike's fault. I just performed it.
This one's a tough one for me to answer because I don't get it. I don't mean that in any kind of derogatory or negative way. But if people don't make small talk during the game, it bothers me. I get social anxiety from people not making small talk.
Because what are they planning?
No, it's not that. It's just that I want to hang out and have a good time. So I will try to talk to the people at my thing. I'll ask them about what they do. Did you see the Spider-Verse movie? It was amazing. Or whatever. Or if that doesn't work, then I start just really jumping into the game, like getting into the theme of the game, whatever it is. Even if the theme is, building a castle. I don't know. I just want there to be a patter of talk.
I like to engage if I can, but I usually wait until I try to engage the person whose turn it is not. I want to get through the description of the game first. If I'm teaching, let's get through the rules. Let's get playing. And then I'll try and, chat a little bit when somebody is taking some time to think. I can ask something of the person that's across from me that isn't taking their turn and try and get some engagement that way when those people are not in the game at the moment.
Yeah, this might be a better question for people who actually are introverts. Because... Well, no. And again, because they can empathize more with this.
Yeah.
And I agree that, people who are extroverts like gaming, but I've met some people who are really strong introverts and they love gaming just as much because for them it's not the experience, it's the game itself. And some people, it's a way for them to socialize with others without having to do... Like, you go to a party. Have you ever been to a party or a mixer, Eric, where you knew, like, one person?
Yeah. And I end up talking to that person.
Yeah, Right. It's really... I struggle with those, too. Like, I don't... This doesn't happen to me often. But occasionally I'll be somewhere at some place where I'm at an event. This happened to me last year when I went to a Canadian convention, and they had all the VIPs go to one area. And... So I went and I was supposed to, and then people paid to get in this area, and most of the people were cosplayers and fantasy authors and people I didn't know much of anybody there. And so I was like, so I talked to the few people I knew, and then just tried to talk to people, but I didn't have anything to talk to them about. If I'm playing a game, we can at least start talking about the game, and it might lead to other topics.
Right. Yeah, I mean, if I was in that situation, after I talked to the one person I knew, I'd often try and find some activity or some other external thing to talk about rather than just walking up to someone and introducing myself. I try and find people clustered around a painting or watching a show or listening to music and insinuate myself into a conversation about that thing. That would be my in.
And so if that's the case, if that is a tough thing for you, I don't even know how you would signal that to me, for example. Because I'm trying to think back if I've met someone and I'm like, man, that person's not talking at all. I've met some people who talk less, but they still seem to respond to my questions and stuff.
Yeah. I don't know. I just try and be friendly to everybody at the table and keep them engaged.
Maybe I gravitate to the person at the table who does talk a lot. I don't know.
Maybe.
Or maybe I just hang out with a lot of extroverts, I mean. I don't know. I will say if there's a lot of extroverts at the table, there's a lot more yelling going on.
That's true. And then the introverts on the tables next to you are very upset.
All right, Jordan says, whenever companies co-publish a game like Stronghold bringing over the 2F Spiel games, or one of the many licenses that he works with, who is responsible for the component quality? Is it a cop-out to blame Stronghold for poor component quality when they're not the initial publisher? Very rarely. Side note here, do you know that Stronghold's starting to do Kickstarter games?
I did not know that. I thought they said they were never going to do that.
Well, I asked him that today, and he said, well, now they're part of the Indie Boards and Cards, that whole indie game studio.
Yeah.
So they kickstart some games. But it won't be all of them. Anyhow.
Okay.
Are there many publishers like Tasty Minstrel Game that update and improve components, or are they typically just ports?
They're usually ports, especially if you're trying to co-publish simultaneously or close to simultaneously with the European release. Then you have to use the same factory, the same manufacturing chain. You're not making an upgrade from one edition to the other. I think it's often just simpler to say, all right, let's translate the text and hit print and just go with what we have. It requires a lot of extra effort and planning to say, these cubes aren't quite as nice as I'd like them to be. Let's up this a little bit, because then now you have two editions of the game. That might cause a significant change in how the game's produced. But Tasty Minstrel has done it for their deluxe versions of games.
Yeah, actually, interesting enough, sometimes it's problematic. I'm just about to go off on Bonacor for allowing bad components to come out. But specifically, he upgraded, I remember this specifically, he upgraded the Pursuit of Happiness.
Oh, okay.
It was a nicer version, right? And then I got the Artipia, but I didn't get his new version. I didn't think anything about it. I had the Artipia version, the original one. Mm-hmm. And then I got the new expansion from Stronghold, and they didn't match.
Oh.
The cards were slightly different sizes and stuff, and I was like, what's this all about? So that's a small thing.
Yeah.
But to be specific, can I blame Stronghold for the poor component quality? Yes. Even if they're not the initial publisher, he made the deal to work with that publisher.
Yep.
He has to take the blame and or credit. I promise you, he takes the credit for Terraforming Mars. Now, don't get me wrong. He's a very generous guy. He'll be like, Fricks Games did this, and this. But if you say, Terraforming Mars is one of the best games ever, his chest puffs a little. All right? He's a little pleased that he brought that game to the market.
And he looks around to see if Tom's nearby to hear that. Like, if you tell him that, he'll look around like, did Vassal hear that? Because he should hear that. You should tell him that.
But I'm also going to call him out when I think the quality's bad also.
Yep.
Tom Vassal doesn't like fun indeed, but he does like quality. All righty, well, that's enough questions for today. We'll get to some more next time. I think it's time to go back in time.
Back in time.
It's a Dice Tower Top 10.
The Dice Tower's Top 10 list is sponsored by Cool Stuff Inc. Cool Stuff Inc. Cool stuff in stock at coolstuffinc.com.
All right, 201 episodes ago.
Wow.
Episode 386. And 387, incidentally. Eric and I talked about the best and worst of 2014. So, first of all...
I feel old.
That's true. The biggest news of 2014 was, like, we usually did these, this was back when we were still doing our end of the year list, and we'd have like a whole bunch of people coming in and talking about stuff, and everyone gives different answers.
Right.
And every single person basically said the same thing. Asmodee and Fantasy Flight merged.
Ah, that was 5 years ago.
That was 5 years ago, man.
Wow.
The only other news that kind of came out of this was, I think, Fantasy Flight announced that they were going to retire some of their living card games. That was basically it. Now, when we looked at the year, we were talking about how Kickstarter was starting to become a thing. Jeff Engelstein pointed out that he was starting to get fatigued from so many games coming out. Can't imagine where he's at this point.
He was on the forefront. Yep.
You declared it the year of the dice game.
Okay.
So.
Yep.
But there were so many things to talk about this year. And here's the thing. When we go back and we look at these years, someone asks, every year, they're like, how good was this year? And I'll say, well, it's hard to tell. We will have to wait till 5 years later. Well, in this case, we are looking at the 5 years later. And I think, for me personally, 2014 was an amazing year.
This was a solid year.
There's two games of my favorite games of all time that came out this year. And I think the top 10, every game is in my top 100 of all time. Of my top 10. And I think there's a couple games that didn't make my list that are also my top 100. There's a lot of solid games that came out over the course of 2014. Although my list is extremely different than when I made it in 2014. Mostly because we were still not playing the Essen games as fast back then. Right.
Yeah, you didn't have... Well, you've got a little bit of lead time these days, too. You'll often get a few things in advance and be able to play them. So it's you're able to get through a few more. My list is quite different. I guess half of it was on my list 5 years ago. The other half is stuff that I didn't get a chance to play, I think, at that point.
Well, let's just jump into it then. I want to talk about some of the stuff we said in the past, but I don't want to spoil some of the stuff we're saying now. So
sure, okay.
We'll jump into our top 10 games, and then we'll keep going.
Number 10.
My number 10 is a cute little deck builder called Flip City, where the cards are double-sided, and as a mechanic in the game, can pay to flip them over and make them usually better versions of the cards. Later expansions added cool mechanics where you sort of use up the card and flip it back over, which you can then recharge, and they're designed to flip back and forth a lot. But there's also a push your luck mechanism where you can keep drawing cards, but if you get too many frowny faces, your turn is over and you don't get anything at all. So it's really neat how you manage all these frowny faces and happy faces and build up your deck. Flip City is a very solid game, one that I'm still playing a good bit. Number 10.
Did you like the sequel as much?
The sequel, you mean the expansion? There's been a couple expansions.
It's a standalone.
Oh, there was a standalone expansion. There was a standalone, and I'm trying to separate them all now. I think so. I mean, I liked it just as a variant. It had sort of cards that worked a little bit differently. Was that the Reuse expansion, or was that something else? Reuse was something.
I think it was Reuse. I didn't like it as much actually, but this is still a pretty neat game.
It wasn't an appreciable difference, I think, in my mind. I just, it was a different set of mechanisms, different set of cards, and it was neat to play with that, with the same general framework.
Well, my number 10 was number 9 back in 2014, so pretty much the same spot. That's the Castles of Mad King Ludwig. Oh, man, the Castle of Mad King Ludwig. What a great game. It's not as good as Suburbia, I think. I'm not even sure you should really compare them. Yeah. They're both from Outback. They both involve building stuff. But Castles of Mad King Ludwig, besides, I was really pumped about it for the castle building part. But actually, I left being excited about this whole price the different rooms, and then people pay you, and then you can buy one that no one bought. It's almost an I split you choose type mechanism, and I think it works really well. Also, did I mention you get to build a castle? Castles of Mad King Ludwig. And 5 years later, you could build between them.
Oh, build between the castles. Yes. This was my number 6. The last time we did the list, I think this just missed the cutoff this year. Still a really solid game. One I haven't played a lot lately, but I need to because I love that footprint when you're done building that castle. It looks so much fun.
Number 9.
My number 9 is another deck builder called Valley of the Kings from AEG. The neat mechanic here is that you have all these cards that you're acquiring with this neat pyramid drafting mechanism where you can buy them from the lower level of the pyramid, then they cascade down. But they aren't going to earn you any points until you entomb them, and that's an action in itself. And as the game gets closer to its end, you're trying to entomb more than the one card that you're normally allowed to do. You're trying to entomb sets of them to earn lots of points. But, of course, that takes them out of your deck, and the most powerful cards are often the ones that are going to score you the most points. And it's a neat little balance and a tipping point to play with. There are 2 additional expansions to Valley of the Kings. I like them all. My number 9, Valley of the Kings.
I also like the 2 standalone expansions for Valley of the Kings, and honestly, the other day we were sorting them out for the library, and I was like, what's the difference? Which one's which? And no one could remember, and no one cared. Because if someone said to me, which one should I get first? I'd be like, just grab one.
Yeah, it doesn't matter. Yeah. They're all
That's
similar.
what I mean. I wasn't meaning like they all are bad. I meant they're all good, but I don't think they're really different enough to make a big difference.
Yeah. The third one actually has a nice chart.
Oh, yeah, that's true. My number 9 was number 2 last time, and that's Star Wars Imperial Assault. I was in love with Star Wars. I think I'm falling out of love with Star Wars. Not that I don't hate the new movie and all that jazz. It's just that I think I'm Star Wars'd out. I don't know. Maybe, and that might be one of the reasons this has dropped. And if I'm going to do Dungeon Crawl, I think I'd rather it be fantasy. But I still think this one's fun. And I really like the 2-player tactical game that you could play rather than going through the dungeon not the missions. That wasn't a dungeon. But still pretty fantastic. It did something I wanted to do my whole life, which was, play a miniature Star Wars game with a story behind it. Lots of fun. Star Wars Imperial Assault.
At the time this came out, I did a demo game, I think at BGG Con, and had actually considered it as the next game after we had played Mice and Mystics to play with my son. This was before I found out that he despised Star Wars. Maybe that's why we never got it, but it is one that I would still consider for that purpose, but there are lots of other options these days too.
Number 8.
Number 8 is I didn't play this at the beginning of or when we did this list 5 years ago. I think I got a chance to play it in the following year, and that is the dexterity head-to-head hockey-like game Clask, with the magnetic pieces that you move from underneath the board, and you're trying to shoot a ball into a goal, but then there are these little magnetic barrier pieces that can get stuck on your piece. So if you get too close to those, you'll attract them, and the other player can knock them into you, and you can score points that way. It's fast and frantic and solid and a nice, it's one of these that could be the centerpiece of a game room. It's a lot of fun. Clask, my number 8.
Stick your hand under the table. Worst box ever.
The box is not great.
I do like the game a lot.
Yeah.
My number 8 wasn't on my list because I don't think I played it in 2014. I played it since, and it is such a great, small little game that is the epitome of push your luck, and that's Port Royal. Now Steve Jackson reprinted this, I think, a year ago or so, but I'm talking about it's Pegasus who did it. I like it. There's a lot of cool little expansions for it. It's a simple game that I just keep coming back to. Lots of fun. Port Royal.
Number 7.
My number 7 is going to show up on Tom's list, so I'll just wait for the co-op expansion to come out.
My number 7 is on Eric's list, and I gotta say, I think Eric had played it like half a time last time we made this list, but we'll see.
Number 6.
My number 6, I just got that. My number 6 is on Tom's list, so I will simply gaze at these gorgeous triangular coins until we get to it.
So my number 6 is Onitama, which technically didn't come out in 2014. Well, it did, but it came out in the small Japanese version. And we played it and loved it and immediately wanted to get it for Dice Tower Essentials, so the nice version came out a couple years later. And it's doing very well. But it originally came out in 2014, which is why it wasn't on my list then. But I played this game and I was like, this is amazing. How simple and fast and awesome this game is. I loved it. Still think it's better than chess. That's right. I said it. Only Tom on my number 6.
It would make sense that it's on your list since, playing it in 2014 is what pushed you to want to get it for the line. That makes sense.
Number 5.
Number 5 for me was my number 2 the last time we did the list. That's Pandemic the Cure, the dice version of Pandemic, one that still hits the table a good bit. I think it's slipped just a bit because there are so many other Pandemic variants these days, and I've played many of those more often than I've played the Cure. It just hasn't hit the table as often as it used to. Still, super solid, quick setup. That's one of its chief advantages here, is it's got these it's up and running in 5 minutes at most. You don't have to do any shuffling of cards. Just roll the dice, put them out. You're good, ready to go. I have a 3D printed laser printed set of dice for the House fan expansion character that I haven't tried yet. It's Dr. House with little cane symbols on his dice. I really want to try that. I haven't done it yet. Anyway, number 5, Pandemic the Cure.
I'm going to disagree slightly with Eric on this one. I don't think this is a bad game by any means. In fact, I remember the first time we played this was at Essen. It was me, you, and your wife who played this.
I think so, and we had a French set of cards. I had to go get them exchanged.
Yeah, also I might have made us lose. But I just think this is forgettable. I think it has been forgettable. I think I don't ever see anyone talking about this game. I would just rather play Pandemic. Or one of the many variations of Pandemic. Do you like this over any of the Pandemic board games?
Yeah, more than Cthulhu. It's hard for me to rank like regular Pandemic with all of its expansions, with the Cure that only has one. It's sort of what kind of mood I'm in. But more than Cthulhu.
Okay. Well, I mean, that's fine. I do know if you want this game, it's probably fairly easy and inexpensive to get a hold of. My number 5 is Eric's number 6. This is a game that I just love because of the sandbox nature of it. Space game. And I'm still kind of... I guess I shouldn't be surprised because this is similar to Eric's favorite game, Merchants of Venus. And that's Zaya. I think... I'm still confused as to why you think Merchants of Venus is better than Zaya. Zaya, you have freedom to go anywhere you want. I mean, you have freedom to do whatever you want, I guess is a better way to put it. I could be a pirate. I can fight other players. I can just go around and trade. There's some nice neutral ships moving around. It has way better components.
True. Yeah, I mean, I like the more focused nature of Merchant. This is more open than I prefer. I still love it. It's my number 6 from the year.
No, and that's true. All right, and that's my number 5. Also really like it. Zaya.
Number 4.
Number 4 was number 5 years ago. That's Roll for the Galaxy. Tom mentioned that I had only played half of a game. That's because half of the components were missing when I opened my copy. It got fixed.
I remember that.
There was a major printing error when this first got released. They had copies that got shipped to BGG Con. I didn't think it was going to be there. And people just started flocking to buy the few that were there. And then as everyone opened them up, they realized that not all the components were there. Entire punch boards were missing. Some were missing several punch boards. Some had duplicate punch boards. There was actually an exchange program going on at the BGG booth I have punch board A, and do you have punch board 6? And they'd exchange and try and get complete copies. Rio Grande figured it out. They actually held back the shipment, fixed it, and got everybody the components they were supposed to get. But for a few weeks, we had this incomplete version of the game and ran out of tiles when we weren't supposed to. Anyway, the game is great, and I actually prefer it. If it's just me, I would rather play this than Race for the Galaxy. I like the mitigation of the dice. I like being able to, sort of upgrade those dice, trade them out for other things. It's a neat system that I really appreciate, and I need to play this one more often. Roll for the Galaxy.
Well, I'm very curious what you're going to think about New Frontiers, which just was released.
Haven't seen that yet.
This is the Race for the Galaxy board game. That is like half Puerto Rico Half Race for the Galaxy.
Interesting.
I'm curious which one you're going to like. Now, here's the deal. I was wondering, why wasn't this on my list back then? And I remembered because Erica just played it a few times before the end of the year. And because of this big debacle, the game, we didn't count it as a 2014 release at the time. We probably still shouldn't, but it's too late. We already made these lists.
Uh-huh.
But I have it on. I went back and looked. It's on my best of 2015 list.
Yes. Because they held it back, because it was, Thanksgiving weekend that they discovered this error. It probably shipped in the last month of December, or last couple weeks of December.
That's funny, because I just declared in our Dice Tower Awards group that New Frontiers is going to count as a 2019 game, even though it came out like the last few days of 2018. That's Rio Grande history repeating itself. But yeah, Roll for the Galaxy is fun. As time has gone by, I think Race has slid ahead of it for me, but they're both very good games.
It's an interesting note because often we make these calls about what's at the end of the year when we're talking about the Dice Tower Awards, and we have to sort of draw the line in the sand somewhere. But after that, we have to go with what the database on Board Game Geek says, because we can't keep track of all those little edge cases anymore. We just have to go with what the numbers say.
Well, I am making this is it's not a New Year's resolution, I suppose, but I have decided in 2019 I'm writing down every game that I'm reviewing and going over and remembering that which ones count as 2019 releases when I do that.
So then you can say, here is the list from that year?
Yes. I'll be able to go and I'll just look at my personal lists from these years rather than Board Game Geek.
Sure.
I hope. Anyway, my number 4 is Sheriff of Nottingham. This... Maybe I said, because it's in Dice Tower Essentials, I'm not going to include it. That sounds like something I might have said. But whatever. I love this game. Great bluffing. Super fun game. It's still in print today, which is good. I'm trying to think which games on our list are still in print today. Orleans still is. Spoiler. Zaya still is. Onitama still is. Roll for the Galaxy still is. Clask still is. Mm-hmm. Yeah, a lot of these games are still in print. Anyway, Sheriff of Nottingham, wonderful bluffing game. I love it. It should be on Eric's list, but it's not.
Number 3.
My number 3 was my number 3 5 years ago as well. So it's stayed put. Legendary Encounters, an alien game. I love the evolution of the standard Legendary system that came out with the Marvel game, how you can sort of see what's coming down the track and spend action points to flip them over and deal with them before they're a direct danger to you. But sometimes flipping them over early might reveal something that's good. And then if the good stuff gets into your main ship, then, you're going to lose it. I like the cooperative aspect. This is fully co-op instead of semi-co-op, and you can coordinate. That's a mechanic. You can play cards on other people's turns. I just think it's solid and exciting, and it's fun to play through the Alien movies with Legendary Encounters, my number 3.
Yeah, this didn't do it for me as much as Legendary, but I know why people like them. My number 3 was Eric's number 7. This is the first time you're hearing it this episode. Orleans. This
I didn't hear anything.
Bag building game, which was actually not the only one to come out that year. The Hyperborea also came out this year, but this one did not get the love Orleans did. Orleans has... People are still playing it. And you mentioned the cooperative thing. You played that at the con, didn't you? At the retreat?
I did not play it at the retreat.
Well, someone else did, and they won.
Nice.
So I just remember watching them playing it. So that was neat. Yeah, I love the Orleans a lot. It's DLP is a little hit and miss with me with games, but they struck gold with this one. The sequel, Altiplano, was good, but I still like Orleans best. My number 3 and Eric's number 7.
Yeah, I think I prefer it with the cooperative expansion, but it's still, the competitive version is very solid. I like the bag building, the engine building, tweaking your bag, and then, expelling people to City Hall that you don't want anymore is really cool. It's neat. It is possible to really mess yourself up if you get rid of too many of one color. but the ability to do that and tweak your system is really fun.
Number 2.
Number 2 was my number 1 5 years ago. Still very solid. That's Splendor. I just love the simplicity of this one. That everyone talks about. If it weren't for those chips, this wouldn't be. And no one would talk about this if it weren't for the chips. It's still a really cool system. Simple engine building. You get these personality cards. That then can produce that color gem. So as you get more cards in front of you, not only are you earning points, but now it makes it easier to get more and better cards. And can you do that more efficiently than your opponents? It's simple, fun, Splendor, my number 2.
Yeah, this one didn't make my top 10, but there's no question this one's great. I occasionally would say, so it's just such a game replaced Splendor, but that's how good Splendor was that we're even talking about it that way. Mm-hmm. In 2014, this was easily the people's choice of the year, and I still see people playing it today. My number 2 was my number 3. Still loving on this game, Arcadia Quest. Love it. Now, this might change in 2019 with Starcadia Quest coming out. Will Starcadia Quest beat out Arcadia Quest? I don't know. Star Wars Imperial Assault eventually did not beat out Descent, so who knows? But Arcadia Quest, just so much silly fun, attacking other people, attacking monsters. It's a game that's left me with great stories. I didn't think I would like a chibi game as much as I like this one, but it's a lot of fun. Arcadia Quest.
And finally, number 1.
My number 1 moved up a few positions from 5 years ago, where it was number 4, and that's Istanbul. This is the one that has really stayed and maintained its position as a mainstay of my group. I love the pace of Istanbul, how it's a race as to who can get these rubies the fastest, and the random board setup means every game's just a little bit different. It's just really solid and quick, and one that is still hitting the table on a regular basis. My number 1 of the year, Istanbul.
And my number 1 is still the same number 1 that it was, because even though this game seems like it's dead, although they keep making expansions for it, I still love it, and that's Dice Masters. I was telling Z today, because they're announcing some more expansions for the Warhammer Dice Masters, I said, even I'm getting a little tired of these expansions, and I love the game because I have so much content, I'm never going to play with all of it now.
Right.
Like, I will never play with everything I have. It's just not possible. But I still think it's a fantastic hybrid of a dice and Magic the Gathering style game. I love it. It's a lot of fun. Dice Masters.
Indeed. I have the Marvel cards, and now that my kids are more in tune with the Marvel Cinematic Universe, I think it would be a really good time to bring this out. I've been sort of waiting for my youngest to get old enough to handle it, but he's very close. But I think he would really like playing with the superheroes.
So back in 2014, a couple things we talked about. We were surprised. One of the games that did not make either one of our lists, actually, which I was surprised about, is Dead of Winter. We both liked it a lot, and it almost made my top 10. The second edition of Cash and Guns, this is really starting to make me feel old. It's the only edition of Cash and Guns at this point.
Right.
Deus, Thunder Alley, Viceroy, Royals, Splendor, you mentioned that, Patchwork. That's one of the most popular games that come out this year, for sure. That's 5 years old already, and now it's only been copied 80 times by Uwe himself.
Uwe Rosenberg, yep.
Star Realms is probably another extremely popular game to come out that's still going strong, and probably the game we're going to get yelled at the most for neither one of us.
Yeah, it's another one that has so much content, I will never play all of those cards.
Sure. Well, I think you could, though, more so than Dice Masters.
Maybe.
Then the one we're going to get yelled at the most for not having on our lists, Five Tribes. I'm just not as big a fan as other people, but I get why people like it. Certainly one of Days of Wonder's biggest games in the last 5 years.
Sure.
Cold Express, which won the Spiel des Jahres. And then Camel Up, which also won the Spiel des Jahres.
Wow, that
they just
seems...
happened to both come out in the same year.
Yeah.
Well, one for the following year and one for that year.
Yes.
That's how it works.
It's
Imperial
confusing.
Settlers, which is still going extremely strong. One Night Ultimate Werewolf. This was the point where Ted Alspach fell off the elevator and hit his head and woke up and realized he was actually a werewolf. And he needed to make propaganda for it. And this was the beginning, 2014, of Eric's board game app career as a voiceover artist.
That is very true. I had done a few Kickstarter videos before, but I had not done an app before, and I'm delighted that One Night has continued on in many versions because it keeps me working.
Spyfall was a big game that came out this year. Alchemists brought apps. King of New York, unfortunately, did not have the legs we thought it would.
Yeah, I mean, we're still playing it.
Well, are we?
I am. My kids are.
Really? Oh, okay. We still play. We went back to King of Tokyo.
Interesting.
Evolution did very well coming out this year. The new version from it for North Star, and they're still acting like it's a new game today. Deception Murder in Hong Kong. Red 7. That was all the rage. Remember that? Everyone was talking about Red 7.
I almost put it on the list. It's like 11 or 12. It just missed the cut on this list.
Red 7 was the mind of 2014.
Yes, it was.
The Ticket to Ride 10th edition came out, which means we're halfway to the 20th. Diamonds was a big card game that everyone talked about. Kanban for the heavy gamers.
Yep.
Medieval Academy, which never got enough love. Good Cop, Bad Cop. This was also the year that Tuscany came out and made viticulture oh so amazing. And then Witness. Oh, there was so much. I'm telling you, this is one of the best years of gaming.
Yeah, and Paperback. You missed Paperback on the list. That's another one that almost made my list this time.
Oh, okay. Well, that's the thing. Paperback is like third tier. Not that that's a bad thing. It's just where this game was.
Yeah.
So I'm looking through the worst game. What did you say was the worst game? The Pietas Curse Earth. Do you remember playing
that? Man, that was terrible. Yeah, it was a game, very small publisher that I ran into at Essen, and it looked interesting, and I was trying to overlook the warning signs. I should have paid attention to the warning signs. It was just, the rule book was almost incomprehensible. It was boring. The whole thing was a mess. Blech.
You said the best children's game was Coconuts.
Oh, yeah.
Which I still think is great. I said it was a tie between Robot Turtles and Doodle Quest, a game I still enjoy now.
Yes. We
both picked Splendor for best family game. Most innovative game, you said, was Tragedy Looper.
Oh, yeah. That one I don't think was on my list this year. When I actually looked at the numbers, I wonder if Tragedy Looper came out earlier in a Japanese edition or something. So it's not listed in the Board Game Geek database as a 2014 game.
Well, you said the strangest game, and I remember you playing this game because you played it with Samuel Healy, was Discount Salmon.
Discount Salmon.
Well, all joking aside, the designer of that made a pretty good party game this year called Let Her Go.
Okay.
Also, he made the game called Bees. The best expansion you said was Mice and Mystics Downward Tales.
Oh, yep.
And I said it was Seven Wonders Babel. Wow, that's 5 years?
Yeah.
Oh, man. And our favorite gaming events. Ooh, do you want to remember what they were?
Oh, I don't know.
For you, it was Gen Con.
Okay.
Because that was the live show of wonder.
That was the singing show, wasn't it?
That's one of my favorite shows ever.
Yep.
Alrighty, folks. Well, that's that. It's interesting for us to go back. Go to our forums, either on our Facebook group or on Board Game Geek, or just go to our website, dicetower.com, and check out the forums. Go right now and vote for the best games from 10 years ago, which was 2009. Whew. Were you on the show in 2009?
That is when I joined the show, 2009. We are approaching my 10-year anniversary on this program as co-host, Tom. Yeah.
You get a golden microphone when that happens, I think.
Great. What does it sound like? You can plug it into the booth.
It doesn't work, actually. It's symbolic. Come on, man. It's like the key to the city.
Oh, you mean those don't unlock everything in the city?
I'm going to rob this city blind.
At last! The fools!
Alrighty, folks. Well, we appreciate you coming around on board. This is exciting. This is going to be a busy month. Don't forget, our Kickstarter is the 21st. Kind of burn that date into your brains. Watch our YouTube channel. All kinds of cool things happening. Dice Tower Cruise is happening soon. A lot of neat things. But we're just going to go back because it's a new year and things to do. Until next time, I'm Tom Vassell.
I'm Eric Summerer.
And you've been listening to The Dice Tower.
Thanks for listening. Promotional consideration has been provided by game publishers in the form of review copies of games. This episode, number 587, was recorded on December 27th, 2018. Mandy and Suzanne join you next week, and in 2 weeks we head back 10 years with our top 10 games from 2009. This podcast is sponsored by listeners like you. Thank you for your continued support. And speaking of support, the Jack Vassell Memorial Fund is dedicated to providing support to members of the board gaming community in their hour of need. If a catastrophic event has become more than you can handle, find out how we can help at jackvassell.org. The Dice Tower is produced by Tom, Mandy, Suzanne, and Eric, with assistance from Itai Perez, Derek Porter, Rob Searing, and Roy Cannaday. Welcome, Roy. Fear of Rugrats reruns provided by Nicktoon Phobia. Timothy Pinkham composed our theme, and hosting is provided by Cool Stuff Inc., where you can find great games at great prices at CoolStuffInc.com. Let us know what you think of the show by posting to the Dice Tower Guild at BoardGameGeek.com, following the Dice Tower on Twitter, or by emailing us at dicetower@gmail.com. And don't forget to visit the other shows in the Dice Tower Network, including Board Games with Panda, The Broken Meeple, Start Space, The Secret Cabal Gaming Podcast, Tabletop Game Talk, Board Game Blitz, and Dice Tower Tonight. Find out more at dicetowernetwork.com. Until next time, from all the gang at the Dice Tower, Happy New Year, and have fun gaming. So I wonder if at this point, there are some games that we didn't get to play. When we did this list in 2014, we're like, okay, we're going to get to these. I bet the ones I didn't get to by now, I'm probably not going to get to.
Ooh, let's look at the ones that you didn't get to that you said you wish you had played. Here you go. Ready?
Yeah.
5 Tribes.
I've played that, yes.
Abyss.
Yes.
Panamax.
Yes.
Paperback.
Yes.
Firefly Blue Sun.
Yes.
You win!
I did it!